So we are connected.
You ought to know. Well, now you ought to know by now. You ought to know. Well, now you ought to know by now.
All right. We are here tonight with my man Pat Miletich. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, you quite talented actually. Very good.
Miletich. What is the I guess you would call it the genetic background of that? Like where's your family from?
My family is originally from Croatia, so
Okay.
former Yugoslavia.
Awesome.
So yeah, up by Zagreb, which was the coal mining and farming area. And so when people migrated or immigrated back then at Ellis Island in New York, they would ask you what you did for a living, and they would then look around the country to industry or farming or whatever it was you did, and they say, point to this on the map and say, that's where you're going.
Okay.
So
Well,
the Croat, a lot of Croatians went to southern Iowa to the coal mines and the farming.
that's amazing. I grew up as a soccer player, and my first soccer coach, he was from Roma, Italy, and he was like off the boat. He barely spoke any English at all. And he always had us watching the Croats. He like I did as a little kid, I was like, Croatia, where, I had no idea. But
Yeah.
he had so much respect for Croatian soccer, or football as they say. And yeah, so I grew up watching Croatian soccer just because my particular my first soccer coach was really into the style of play that you guys had.
Okay. Yeah. And I've got some good friends that are in Croatia. They're dual citizens that are heavily involved in the operations of some of the bigger soccer clubs in Croatia. So, and Croatians are, it's only a nation of about 4 million people,
That's it.
but yeah, but Croatians are very, very proud of their heritage and their kind of warrior past, and the like what was it, 1493, something somewhere around there, I think it was 1496, that the Battle of Sisak, Croatia, where little Croatia stopped the Ottoman Empire and pushed them back. That's why Bosnia Herzegovina exists
Mm.
today.
That's a
So just
to,
go
to
ahead.
to think about where Croatia is in the Mediterranean. I mean, it's just such an incredible spot. They would have to be in the middle of a lot of mix-ups or a lot of dust-ups, I bet.
Most definitely, yeah. So yeah, it's yeah, a lot of, and I didn't even name myself. My ring name when I was fighting professionally was the Croatian Sensation, but that was given to me by a guy that played football for my dad in college, and he had gotten basically knocked out on a play.
Hmm.
He was a fullback, and back then, the first week or two of football, you'd have athletic tape with your name, last name written on the tape. And
Right.
my dad stood up. He said my dad stood over him and goes, "Buric, are you Croatian?" And Dan Buric goes, "Yeah, coach." And he goes, "Get up."
Yeah, that name Burrich sounds familiar. Did he play at a high level?
No, he became a sports broadcaster, and
Okay.
then now I think he's a financial expert out, I think, out east. Well, Indianapolis from Iowa anyway is east. But yeah, so that's how I got the name. So
Oh, that's awesome. We got Tom Barnett from Down Under in the chat.
nice.
Yeah, he and his lovely they've spent time in Croatia during the summertime. He's saying, Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. He says it's really beautiful. Uh,
Yeah.
are we coming through nice and clear, everybody? I just want to make sure the audio and the visuals are awesome. I know that I've had some some hurdles in the past with all that. I just want to make sure the chat is all good before we get into the meat.
Yeah.
Um, it's so yeah, we're sounding good. Um, so for everybody out there, I have a friend in the middle of Florida named Jimmy Gale, and I helped do some permaculture. I actually never worked for Jimmy. He just hired me to consult on a couple of his projects down there, and we've maintained a friendship over 15 years. And he and I have both since moved back to the United States. And I went ahead and contacted Jimmy because I was like, hey, I'm going down to see my parents in Florida in December, and I'd love to swing by and see what you're doing down there. And then he introduced me to Pat. And my best friend in the world, he owns it's called Phoenix Fight Gear. It's a martial arts apparel company. And I remember as a kid, like, well, I say kid, young man, many, many moons ago, watching UFC. I never watched it religiously. I wasn't like that. I wasn't into striking martial arts except for when I was a kid. But I remember watching you back then, so I was like so amazed that you were into soil. Jimmy was like, "Hey, my friend Pat Miletich, he was a UFC champion. He's part of this organization, the Soil Saviors." And I was like, "Awesome! Like, let's hook it up. Like, let's get this thing going," because I get so excited when there's a high level athletes, people that have been very embodied. And when they come to the recognition that there's health in the soil, like everything starts in the soil. So
Yeah.
how about you give people a little bit of background of pretty much how you've gotten to be a soil savior?
Yeah, sure. And uh, I feel like Steve Martin in the movie The Jerk when he says where he was born and how he was, all of that. But I guess say I was born a poor white kid in Iowa, um, but sick. I spent a lot of my childhood with respiratory issues and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
and it held me back from kind of really becoming the athlete that I desired.
Mm.
For the most part. And so eventually, about the age of 19 or 20, I did a lot of research and talked to a lot of pretty knowledgeable people about more holistic health and athletic performance, and read a lot of books and things like that. And I finally figured I'd put together from all the knowledge I was getting from different people and books, look for the things that I thought would help me with my breathing, my endurance, my respiratory system. And once I started taking those substances, I basically went from breathing through a straw full of mucus my whole life to a crystal clear giant PVC tube. So I had endless endurance because I had to work so much harder than everybody else just to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
So my work ethic was always there. Well, now with perfect breathing, all of a sudden everything changed for me at the time. So that led to me winning a US kickboxing title and eventually a UFC title.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, continued to research, but that led to, well, if it made a kid that was sick his whole life into a world champ because of changing, my health so much, what's it going to do for healthy athletes? And
Right.
so these components turn those guys into superhumans, and kind of history was made there with a lot of world champs and a lot of pay-per-view athletes, and that led to working with a lot of law enforcement and then military, doing a lot of broadcasting for Showtime Sports and ESPN and
Mm-hmm.
other companies like that. But more than anything, it was just it just flipped everything upside down as far as a funnel, as far as my reception to understand really what was happening. And so my family um, was from southern Iowa, agriculture a lot down there, and during the 70s, the Green Revolution, when I was a kid, they started getting sick because they
Mm-hmm.
started using the chemicals heavily. cancers and Parkinson's and other things that started to take hold back then. And I clearly remember, the elders in my family starting to die off because of these illnesses. And that burned into my brain. It always kind of stuck with me. So as I got older and started to learn more,
Hmm.
it just resonated with me that there's a right way of doing things and a really wrong way of doing things, in my personal opinion.
Yes. Yeah, and so in the Green Revolution, I lived in India in the early 2000s, and they had their Green Revolution in the 60s, and it was mainly sponsored by John Deere. And this was before I moved to Costa Rica, before I became a homesteader or anything like that. But I was appalled because they were describing to me in southern India about how the Green Revolution there destroyed the entire countryside,
Yeah.
where before they used to have, say 100 to 120 subsistence farmers per farm, but everybody ate, everybody had good accommodations. They could, everybody could have normal relations with, and reproduce with other people from other farms. And there was this indentured servitude, but it was more like a serfdom where only the Brahmin class could really own land there anyway, but
Okay.
everybody was fed. And then the Green Revolution comes in, pushed by all this manufactured these massive machines, and they told me within 10 years the countryside was decimated because all these tractors were bought, but there was nobody there to fix them. There was nobody there to maintain them. It got rid, all these farms that used to have over 100 or 150 people per farm would now have 10. So where do all those people go? Where do 90% of your workforce go when there's that's all there is to do? And then what started to occur was infighting between farms, and then consolidation, and then predatory loan practices and all this other stuff.
Sure.
And guess what? Within a very short period of time, the southern India countryside was absolutely decimated.
Well, and that's just for the people that in agriculture, they're not bad people. They're trying to pay their bills, right?
Right.
They're trying to feed their family. America, for instance, trying to put little Johnny and Sally through college, all those things that Americans dream to do for their children, make their life better, maybe a little bit easier for their own. And so the people that work in these industries, they're not bad people. It's just that the education system, being basically hijacked by chemical company money and all of these things that have taken place. It's 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 a very unfortunate situation that we're in, that I think a lot of people are starting to wake up from and wanting to go back the other direction, back towards the natural processes.
Yeah, it's really nuts to see. I call it the white man's burden in a way. And I suffer from this. I will totally take this on. I have a way of automating things that I find difficult to do out of existence. And I keep seeing this. We're having fun because I have a construction company this summer, and we're building in this remote location, and the dudes I'm working with, they were all like innovating in process. And I said to you, like, do any of you want to work? like if we actually do all these things, if we implement all these things, you guys are out of a job. You realize that? And we were all laughing because I don't know if it's like the Northern European or the European mind, where it's just like, oh, okay, well, this is hard. I don't like hard. So I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z, and it's gonna make everything easy, and then I'll get my little tiny hats down in the Middle East to market it for me, and we're all good. It's like hilarious to watch what dudes do to get out of working hard.
That's America in a nutshell. I mean,
Yeah.
it really is. And that's you know Dan Gable, who's the legendary wrestling
Yes.
coach, Olympic champion and
Hmm.
coached University of Iowa to a massive number of NCAA championships. His One of his favorite statements is, "It's human tendency to look for an easy way of doing things. There's nothing that replaces hard work because the process, right?"
Hmm.
Um, and that's the Midwest in general. People are still, that blue collar
Yes,
farming, agriculture, just tough people, right?
definitely.
So I appreciate that. Now that I'm a little bit older, a little bit slower, I don't mind a little easier, but
Right.
um,
Well, it was great because it like I was a decently high level athlete. Like I was a 4-year starter at Michigan State, played in the pros
yeah,
a little bit, and one of my the best interaction I ever had with Nick Saban, and I didn't have many, but my best interaction with him was actually during a spring football practice where he was killing us. It was his first year as a head coach there, and he was just like, "Okay, I am going to make, at least half of you quit through the conditioning, through the spring conditioning." And we were doing the sprint stead test, and we were doing all these things, and like people were dropping like flies. And I was like, like I was bending over. They're like, "Don't bend over. Get your arms up. Breathe." And I mean, I had played soccer at a very high level, at like a scholarship level soccer player. So I was used to running 10 miles in a game. Like
sure.
I had a lot of endurance, and even me, I was beat up. I was thinking of quitting. I felt like I was dying. I was hyperventilating, and I remember I'm on this 110-yard sprint, and he was standing at the 50, and we would always run in groups, right? So my group had like 8 guys in it, and we're doing our sprint. And these sprints in the sprint stead test, for those of you that don't know, they time you in your fastest time in the summer conditioning, and then you have to match, like depending on where you are in the test, either 80, 85 or 90% of your fastest time. And every time you don't hit that, then you have to rerun it until you hit that percentage.
Wow.
And so it was brutal. I think we were on like number 16 or number 17, and nobody was hitting it. Like we were all dying. And so I'm running and I'm flailing. I'm so tired. Like my heels are crossing my body. So my right foot is hitting my left butt, and my left heel is hitting my I was losing my motor function. And then I hear Saban yelling at the top of his lungs. He's like, "It's not that you can't do it. It's that you think you can't do it." And I had this internal realization. And I was like, oh, all the pain and discomfort and everything that I'm feeling, I'm just feeling it. So what? Like, it's just a feeling. And then from that point on, I had mastery over my body, because I had a way of like actually disconnecting my I guess you would say
You're suffering.
I could
Disconnect
I
from
could
the suffering.
disconnect from the suffering and just motor through. I could just execute the function, right?
Yeah.
And from that point, I literally I was like the master of my dominion. Before that point, all those years of playing all those different sports and excelling at it, I did not have that. I had like the attachment to the way I felt. And the way I felt was like running the show. And then from that point on, no. That doesn't matter. I could only imagine in fighting, like when you're fighting and you're getting beat on and you have like a broken rib or get a kidney punch or contusion in your thigh, like you're like, so what? Like you gotta move on.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, you definitely get conditioned to, I would much rather be punched directly in the face 100 times before taking a shot to the liver, really heavy
Oof.
shot to the liver. I mean, that's not a fun experience, but you get used to those too. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And now I had to pay for all that after my career was over.
Sure.
of like
No, yeah, when you run, you ride it till the wheels fall off, right?
yeah, but the thing that it did teach me though was like it gave me I was talking about this in an earlier stream today, is like for a long time I then went into looking at like the the mechanism of identification, like the fourth wall, that I'll say it, like when they're filming when you're on set, you usually have three walls of a cube, and then the fourth wall is where the camera is. And so after my athletic career, I was around a bunch of other athletes whose careers were over, and all of us were used to being in the zone and all these things. And then to actually be to get into a steady state of being able to actually witness the witnesser was like very effective. That brought me back to like, oh, it's not that I can't do it, it's that I think that I can't do it. It was that level of separation that always allowed the discomfort to be in front of me, not like actually owning it as like, oh, this is mine. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you're a fighter, you're a commentator, you're doing all this stuff, and then soil. So walk us through how you actually got to the soil side of things.
Well, I think it was, I think I started gardening, well, technically on my grandma and grandpa's on my mom's side. There's pictures of me when I'm about two with a garden hoe in a little flannel shirt working with my grandma in the garden. So she obviously is the one that ignited that. But I started gardening in my mom's backyard. I think I was about 12. Um, Took a shovel, got a great idea, tore out the side of a hill, built terraces, backfilled them, started gardens, used, at the time, dog poop for fertilizer,
Mm-hmm.
things like that, and grew tomatoes and cucumbers and melons or whatever. So it's kind of just always been with me. But recognizing, all the health issues around me while I was getting better and improving after, a childhood, like I say, of illness, I started waking up and doing more research and understanding that the problems were definitely more than likely at that time even coming from the soil when I started to realize what they were growing our food with for the most part.
Right.
So, and now we're at what 95% of all food grown in America is grown with synthetics, so it's no wonder, what when you go to the grocery store and see the people around us or at the mall or wherever, and we just see the destruction that's taking place around us, it's not really that hard to put two and two together.
This is so true. This is so true. Yeah, I've been, kind of preaching to people through my podcast for 10 years that we're not in like we were kind of conditioned to believe that, carbon is going to kill us, right? And I've been trying to tell people for the last 10 years, no, we're in a carbon deficit because the soil, like you said, 95% of it is topsoil, that is pretty much deprived. It's condensed and compacted and deprived of a healthy biome, and it's very carbon depleted.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I mean, I, like you, like, came across this on my little farm in Costa Rica. And I was like, the second I started repleting my carbon, all my plants started to take off. Everything started to like take care of itself in a much more genius way than I could have ever, like with NPK or chemical implements and the rest of it.
yeah. No, and that's you know, I guess not being formally educated about any of these things, I just had to bounce around in the dark off of tree trunks and learn as I went. But my, I guess my initial research facility was, the wrestling room and the cages around the world and competition to see which humans could could perform the best in one-on-one situations that took massive amounts of endurance and the ability to endure, a lot of abuse and be able to come back the next day for 8 to 10 weeks for a training camp, that would kill most people in a in a day or two.
Right.
Um, but so it's like soil. The way I look at soil is, well, I can't create immune function in the soil or the plants unless the right components are there, the full, diversity of minerals and biology and all of these things that have to be there. And it's literally identical for a human athlete.
Right.
You can't perform at an extremely high level for an extended period of time unless you're, replenishing the body with very high grade substances that are not created in laboratories that come from the earth.
Yeah, when you were training, were you a heady with all of that? Were you up on, like, making sure that you were always hydrated, replenishing your
Yeah.
minerals, like
Yeah. And I mean, even as a middle schooler, my dad was a football coach, back in those days. And when I was a trainer for his football team before he went to coach college football, um, when I was in elementary, even, I remember him having the giant containers of salt tablets for his athletes,
mhm.
and everybody had to have salt, back in those days, type thing. So, um, yeah, I was starting to learn. There was a product called MLO that was when whey protein first came out, which I don't necessarily advise people to drink whey protein,
Mhm.
just because of how it's derived. But that's all that stuff was coming out when I was in elementary school that many years ago.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I was starting to pay attention to supplementation and learn as I went. But as I got older, of course, and doing a lot more research, I started really digging into the antioxidants, the
Mm.
colloidal silver, because of my respiratory system. If I had any bronchitis and things like that come on, because of my respiratory system had been damaged my whole childhood, colloidal silver would clear it up. You know,
Yeah, colloidal silver is amazing. Did you ever get like one of those Bob Beck zappers and make your own colloidal silver?
no, I haven't.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was using so much of it. I bought from this God, what was that company called? It was a Canadian company, I think, called Sota. And this is like a while back. And I bought they had a little silver electrolyzer, and it was a Bob Beck electrolyzer that I'd make my own colloidal silver. I,
Oh, very cool.
yeah, I pulled up your Soil Savior site here. I just wanted to show everybody the
Okay.
what you're doing here. Like, this is a beautiful site, by the way.
Thank you. Nick Spahn and Guillermo designed all of that and built everything, all the operations of that, and um,
So what
so yeah,
are
they've done an amazing job.
why don't you share with people what you're actually doing? Like, I see you have you and Soil Saviors are the solution. And then you have this
Yeah,
box of 0 to 5 acres. Like, what exactly is happening here?
yeah. So I was very lucky to run across a gentleman who's a business partner, of course, Doc Will Spencer, who's been in uh, soil to human health for, well, 40 years. And so he had respiratory issues. He grew up on a farm in Minnesota and had respiratory issues his whole childhood. And through having that solved through natural means led him on his path. And so Will has spent a lot of time with a lot of mentors from the time he was young, learning about microorganisms, learning about nutrients, learning about diversity of nutrients, learning and understanding that, well, just humans, we need 90 essential elements
Yes.
in the right form to have proper health, genetic expression. So why 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 would we not think that that has to come from the soil? And so through different sources of very high grade um, elements and a huge diversity of microorganisms, basically you can mix it in water, a foliar spray it on your soil and your garden, your orchard trees, your ranch land, whatever, and you're going to get huge genetic expression, health, and also break down all the toxins in soil. So it doesn't matter if it's pesticide residues, heavy metals, forever chemicals. We've got data on forever chemicals being broken down in just 2 months down to
Beautiful.
non-detect levels. And then also, even we've got data now from Western North Carolina on radiation contamination going down to far below non-detect levels in just 4 to 5 months. So we're 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 pretty solid in regards to understanding and that no matter what the problem is in the soil,
Hmm.
that it's going to be addressed, and that the microorganisms needed, because there's such a huge diversity in there, that the right ones are going to express themselves
Hmm.
to take care of the problem and correct the environment.
This is awesome. Have you guys ever tested with biochar?
We have not. Well, people have used our product with biochar 100%, and the sources for biochar vary so much. You never know
Yeah.
where it's coming from and what the source was. And so, what we like people that compost a lot, you know, like to say, well, the plant matter and animal matter, whatever it is you're using in there for your compost pile, the nutrients that either the animals ate or that the plants pulled up out of the ground that are in that compost pile, that's all that is going to exist there for the most part. And then you're going to have a certain diversity of microbes that you can count on if you do it right. Well, by adding a huge amount of mineral diversity and elements and a much larger diversity of microorganisms, it just powers it up. I mean, it makes
Hmm.
it nuclear compost. Is like Billy Bond out of North Carolina, the pimp, the pimp of permaculture, they call him, because perma, permaculture is my passion, is what pimp stands for.
Nice.
Billy and his son are amazing guys, and so he's done a lot of tests in North Carolina with the product, and it's broken down, yeah, broken down the toxins, and they planted a bunch of orchard trees and berry bushes and things like that in the most toxic area that they found along the river where that hurricane had gone through and washed the radioactive mine tailings through that valley and caused a lot of problems. But those plants are flourishing where they used our product, and it's he goes, there's no way in the test that he had done on the soil for the levels of contamination that these plants, because everything else everywhere else is dead.
Hmm.
So those plants are flourishing, and that soil that they've tested, is the toxins are gone. So
That's awesome. I'm looking at what you actually have in your remedy here. And these are all things I've actually had like direct physical contact with as a earthen builder. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, I would eat that. It's pretty cool to see these, the earth compound, the earth syrup, your earth angels. Man, all the different ponds that I've lined with calcium bentonite clay. The
yeah,
diatomaceous earth is incredible. The resonator microbes. We've been making our own effective microorganisms and mountain microorganisms. That's something
yeah,
I'm a huge proponent of. The earth kelp is incredible. Um, but the licorice is a very interesting. Uh,
that's that's a very unique fulvicumic acid, a
mhm,
humate. Um, it is, because a lot of humate companies will use hydrochloric acid to remove the fulvicumic from, the source, whether it's dead seafloor bed or leonardite, soft coal, or peat bogs. And that throws, if there's biology there, it throws it into a tizzy and out of balance,
mhm.
because nature is going to fight back to try to digest the chemicals that are used. And so then they have to pasteurize a product a lot of times. And so you'll denature something, um, with the natural processes that are used for our fulvicumic and our humate. Um, it is naturally removed through some. I'll just say, I won't go through the details because I don't want everybody to know yet.
Right.
but but it's a natural process to remove the fulvic humic. So the pristine um, soil-borne probiotics that have been at that level, 60,000-year-old sediment layer that's not fossilized, is they remain pristine basically.
That's wonderful. Have you ever taken Shilajit for yourself for your own physical?
Years ago, yeah, it's not quite it's not as quite as bioavailable as um, of course I would prefer. The fulvic humic that we use with no chemical processes or anything is, I mean, it's technically still alive when it comes out of the ground. So when it's flash frozen under extreme pressure, everything in it is suspended in time. So when you put it back in water, it comes back to life, right?
Wow, I would love to. I would love to try that as a supplement because other than taking the essential trace elements and minerals, I've been pretty consistent with the humic acid through, or I should call it the fulvic and humic
Mm-hmm.
materials through the Shilajit. But I've noticed that there are like such a range of
Yeah,
who's giving you the Shilajit. Like I've done over the last 2 years, I've tried five different companies Shilajit, and they're like from the worst to the best is like a whole world of difference. Like it's like
right.
they're not all
Yeah,
made the same.
yeah, and that's why I say it's for us. It's very important to find the, and if we could find a better fulvic humic acid for our cell saviors products, we absolutely would, but we haven't been able to. So, um, and it's the most from Will's standpoint, and he's got a massive amount of experience with humates and fulvic humics in general, is that it's the most bioactive, water soluble, most nutrient dense substance that he's seen ever on the planet. So the levels of and the diversity of the colloid minerals that exist in it is, extremely wide, and the levels are wonderful. And the fact that it's so bioavailable that your cells are going to uptake it and it's going to work its magic, because you think about a peat bog at the 60,000-year-old sediment layer,
Mm-hmm.
a thousand different types of plants over 60,000 years, all the nutrients year after year have decomposed and concentrated at such a massive level that it just packs a huge punch, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
and then not using hydrochloric acid to process it, you keep it natural. And we're biological organisms, so therefore that's why people feel their endurance go through the roof, their recovery, the inflammation, the ability to breathe better, all these things, and it's chelating powers. I've not I've not found anything with the ability to chelate or uh, move toxins out of the body like it does. So
So do you sell supplements for people also?
yeah, if you go to cellsaviors.org,
Ah, look at you.
yeah. So yeah, so helping people understand that we are the soil, and we from the dust you came, back to the dust you'll go. So
I love
what
that.
we do what we do to the soil, we do to ourselves and our children. So
Yeah, it's kind of cool because as an earthen builder, I've built with a lot of different clays, and I'm always trying to teach people about at least the phenomenology of it, like how these things interact with your hands. My other longest held profession is deep tissue myofascial release.
okay,
So, working on adhesions in people's bodies, working through their fascia and everything like that, like I have like a very like hands-on approach to my existence. and,
yeah,
and
okay,
and the coolest thing when you start to get into making natural binders, you start working with things like with wood ash, but not all wood ash is the same. Well, how hot was the fire? Well, how
right,
hot the fire was is what gives you like the really sticky ash. Or if you had a crap fire, then you get the brown ash that doesn't adhere to anything. And then like I got into making geopolymers and going to sides of volcanoes when I lived in Central America and like
Okay.
picking up the pozzolanic ash. I mean, it's technically not pozzolanic ash. That was a term that they used for Roman cement because they were taking it from the volcano pozzolan. But you could just say volcanic ash from different volcanoes and like feeling, okay, I know with how reactive this is or how caustic it is, how long ago this ash was deposited. And
Okay.
then
Yeah.
playing with magnetite and playing with all these different things. And then the difference between the bauxite clay that was aluminum rich relative to the calcium bentonite clay that was, white and calcium rich. All these things, they all have this very specific feel, on the hands, and they have different tastes. Like some of the time I'd have to taste them to know whether or not it was like alkaline or whether or not it was acidic and all the rest of it. So like
Well, you're rare in that fact that, most humans have lost that ability to do that and haven't done the deep dive into things like you have either, right? So, when you see a horse using its hoof to dig into the dirt in
mm-hmm.
a field to lick the dirt, there's minerals there, obviously, and so you still either have it or you reacquired it through all the things that you were doing, which is pretty amazing actually.
I reacquired it because I didn't grow up with it. I was like a metrosexual from South Florida. Like I grew up in the 80s and 90s. It was all about, getting girls and being an athlete to score more girls. Like it was like I didn't have any, like my dad would garden here and there to like, well, actually I have to say we lived out in like the neighborhood that we lived in. They had like people had horses here and there, like they called it plantation acres. And so
Uh-huh.
we had a garden. My stepmother was from Thailand, so we grew lychee nut and longan and all these specialty mangoes and hot peppers. So I had gardening like as like way 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 like way back on the back burner. But I
But
was
it's an imprinting. It's
but
imprinting.
exactly, but I was exposed to it because like I would go out into my yard and grab some grapefruit or some avocado or grab the hot peppers. I used to help my stepmother collect all of her Thai hot peppers for
Nice.
for the they would have these Thai festivals in Miami, and her and her sister had a Thai restaurant, and like these peppers were the hottest thing in the world. Like I forget what they call the scale for heat with all that stuff, but the
Scoville
Scoville was
units.
like they were like number 2 or 3 on that. They were really hot, and I would play pranks on my friends. The friend I was telling you about that has the apparel company for martial arts. Like I played a trick. I actually dared him. I didn't trick him. I was like, Cooker, you won't eat that. And I like egged him on, and he did. And he was like dying for like 10 minutes until I gave him like a glass of milk. It was hilarious. But yeah, like all these things with the gardening, I was really kind of disconnected in because in South Florida, it was a lot like this is subtropical. Like things just will grow. It's not like you have to like really do all that much. The soil isn't all that great, but you have so much water and so much sun that things have a tendency to grow, even if they're not necessarily healthy. And we did do composting, like we did have a compost pile and a tomato ring and things like that, but it was nothing like all that intensive until I moved to Central America, and like where you had to be on top of your yard because the jungle was always trying to take it back. Like
Yeah.
the jungle was coming. And if you made any good soil whatsoever, the jungle, like you'd have vines like growing into it, taking it. It was like, oh, you have good soil. That's why the whole terra preta thing in the Amazon made so much sense to me.
Hmm.
Did you ever hear the story of the terra preta?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, and from my understanding, they not only used, decomposed plant matter to create that, they used a lot of sacrificial bodies, or dead humans and animals to help make that as well. So
I didn't hear that part. I was it was kind of the articles I was reading about it in like 2010. They were focusing on how they were breaking everything down so fast. Because that was always my problem with mulching, was like, okay, I mulch, and my mulch pile, even if like I was doing like really aggressive mulch piles where I was flipping them, say like every 2 or 3 months. One, in the tropics, that's like extremely dangerous because of how toxic the stuff can get when it's breaking down with the mold and then all the bugs and everything.
all the fungus and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a few times where I almost passed out from flipping some compost piles. But at the end of all of it, you came up with like subpar soil. I was like, this is not worth the amount of effort at all. And then these Terra Preta articles were like, they showed the process by which they were cooking down the biomass, and they were making rocket stoves. And I was a builder of rocket stoves, and I was like, no way. They had these things that look like, they kept finding all these like clay, like these broken clay pots in the bottom of these troughs of carbon. And they did like a little drawing, I guess they would say a likeness of what they thought it was. And they had enough of them where they could say, okay, these are pretty consistent. And it looked exactly like a tandoori oven. And they said they would always have a channel coming in one side and another channel coming in the other side. I was like, oh, well, that's your exhaust port. And then that's your air inlet port. And they were always at the bottom of these troughs of these massive swaths of carbon. And I was like, oh my God, they accelerated the breakdown with heat.
Sure.
And it completely was in lockstep with my teacher, Dr. Davidovitz at the Geopolymer Institute, where he showed the cross section of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And he was like, yeah, I think they heated it up from the inside because the geopolymers that they would set best if they were upwards of 400 degrees. And when you see the cross section of the Great Pyramid of Giza, it looks exactly like a massive rocket stove. So they had the casing stones on the outside were dark. They eventually became white casing stones, but the original ones were dark, so they would pick up all the thermal gain from the Saharan sun, going over it. And then from the inside out, they were running these massive fires that not only heated it from the inside, but gave them the fly ash that they needed to actually create the geopolymer in the first place.
Yeah. The intelligence of past civilizations.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
In learning all this, it was like I had no idea because, growing up in South Florida, there was this huge push to teach us about the Spanish conquistadors because, Florida was a Spanish colony, first, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so we were taught about Cortez and all the Spanish and everything like that. So I grew up probably having a little bit more education about the conquistadors through the Caribbean and through Central and South American than most. But it wasn't until I was reading this stuff about Terra Preta where they were getting into the conquistadors, some of the older ones that were in the Amazon basin that were actually writing this down, like chronicling what they were finding there. They were saying that the agriculture in the Amazon basin was more extensive than what some of them had seen in Asia.
No, and the mapping that they've done of the huge civilizations, the existence of numerous complexes and enough to house 250,000 people type setups
Yes.
is it's all been just swallowed by the jungle.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. I was seeing it in my real life when I started to make biochar, and I had this little grove of cacao, and so I only had say about 30 trees, and I started to top dress the grove with the biochar, and all my cacao trees were revitalized and survived the eating of the leafcutter ants. And then guess what started to happen? The jungle started to come in. And like literally I would have vines reaching, like I would cover certain things with plastic if I was trying to get rid of grass in a certain area, and then I'd have biochar covered, and then I would like pull the plastic up and there would be this vine that had literally run 100 meters from the jungle into the thing of biochar. And I was like, I just knew exactly what happened in the Amazon. Is like as soon as the disease hit, and the majority of the Amazonians were gone, because they said it was like upwards of 95% of the agricultural Amazonians were dead within 50 years of the conquistadors. So that's fast.
Yeah, yeah, no, and the implosion of many civilizations are related directly to nutritional deficiencies and destruction, depletion of the soil, the topsoil, and all of those things. So we can map out, the implosion of numerous civilizations that, I mean, look at America right now, the illness that is running rampant. And so from our perspective, we don't talk about disease because to us, it's always environmental,
Right.
whether it's nutrient deficiencies and toxicities and things like that, no matter whether it's soil, plants, honeybees, animals, or humans. It's always those things, environmental factors.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the symptoms that they give names to, we just don't acknowledge those things, and we just know what the cause generally is,
Mm-hmm.
and that situation can be corrected through, the nutrients in the right form, with the diversity of the organisms. And it's, for me, just doing all the testing on the athletes over the years that I've seen, everybody from ultra runners to swimmers to triathletes. My own daughter, just on her first attempt at an Ironman, finished just over 12 hours down in Florida. And she's been, my kids were raised, and I did my best to educate them on what they need to put in their bodies, and they use our products. And my oldest daughter just went out and ran a marathon in just over, I think, 3.5 hours. And
Wow.
my youngest daughter, who's 12, swims with a swim club, and she swims with the 18 and 19-year olds.
Good
So
stuff.
that's proof, and that's just though they're three athletes that happen to be my kids, but other, ultra runners in their 50s who are lowering their times by a minute per mile, and their heart rate goes down 30 beats a minute. There's something significant happening when people who have run their whole lives are doing that now in their 50s.
Mm-hmm.
It's not magic, but it is, biology.
That's brilliant. Yeah, pretty much everybody I've interviewed on my podcast, because I've had a pretty wide ranging group of guests. My roster is a lot of fun, and most of them are alternative doctors, like doctors that were trained classically, but then saw the error in the ways, and then
Sure.
totally flipped. And like most of them are into terrain, like I mean almost all of them.
Well, and that's the thing is, so for me, and I think you'll want to have Doc Will Spencer on
Definitely.
because he's a wealth of knowledge and, applications in the real world, not only with soil and plants, but also animal husbandry. And, he's a homeopath. Uh, so the thing is with my recognizing of the environmental factors and seeing, for instance, in Iowa, 14 lakes were closed. The beaches were closed in the state of Iowa because of an E. coli outbreak, which
Mm-hmm.
is an infection in the lake, right? That's
Yes.
what they would call an infection. So, Iowa is, the home of the most toxic soil, potentially, without a doubt, in the United States. So when it rains, all the synthetic chemicals from the ag world run into the streams and creeks and into the lakes.
Mm-hmm.
And what's nature going to do? It's going to explode in, bacterial numbers to try to digest what we've screwed up. But they'll say because of the E. coli outbreak. They don't say because of agriculture, synthetic chemicals
Right.
running off into those lakes and destroying the health of the lake. So the germ theory based on environment is easy to disprove, and it's just as easy to disprove when it relates to a human being getting an infection or problems, with the symptoms that they show up with. Um, it's we just we don't practice medicine. We don't disease does not exist. That's just not our realm, and so it's what's causing an organism to have these problems, and it's nutrient deficiencies and toxicities every time.
Definitely. Definitely. At the terrainology conference I was just at with the Biggleson brothers, we had Dr. Andy Kaufman there. We had the Bigglesons themselves, whose father was Dr. Harvey Biggleson. And gosh, Dr. Marie Arce, and like all of them in their practices, it's so obvious that your set and setting, like there is no man or woman that's an island unto themselves. Like you are, if you were like standing on the sun, you would be a plasma ball. Like that's, you can't separate yourself from your setting, right?
Right,
and
right.
and the absolute ludicrous nature to think that, oh, okay, this is an independent thing that is, attacking me, and it's independent of the environment I'm in. Like you ask any woman that has a nesting instinct, she has a nesting instinct because she knows her nest determines her mood, which determines her hormone balance and her way of being.
Sure.
Like
Yeah, I mean that's a big part of it. I mean it's the environment is, yeah, through chemicals, factors, nutrient factors, psychological factors, spiritual factors, frequency factors. That's stuff that, on layer on layer on layer. My better half is far better at the EQ, they say, the
mhm.
emotional intelligence and frequencies and all of these things. She's just very in tune in those ways, and I'm just kind of a blockhead that says it is what it is. But so, oh, it's just it's too easy, and unfortunately, the education systems. If we I always pull up historical references to, everybody knows Rockefeller and the chemicals took over medicine, pharmaceuticals in, the 1920s. The Frankfurt School infiltration into universities in the early 1930s damaged the education system severely. German chemical company money
Mhm.
infusions and things like that. And then you get to, Nixon taking us off the gold standard, the monetary system being hijacked, and then mid 70s green revolution, and voila, you've got a disaster of epic proportions happening right in front of our eyes.
Yeah, and then like the big thing I saw, I was so happy I got to see this in such a sad way. I moved to Costa Rica right when the shift in the actual populace shift from being agrarian to being city folk. And so what occurred was when I first was looking at Costa Rica, the average Costa Rican family had 4 kids on average. And then when the 20 years that I was, living there, back and forth and the whole thing, that had dropped to 2. Well, what that did was that put an enormous amount of stress on landowners to switch to chemicals like glyphosate because they no longer had their farm hands. They no
Right.
longer had the kids to help them with the farm, to cut the wood, to clear the land, to move the animals, all the things.
Sure.
So I watched in a very, very short time the absolute transformation of the countryside because the economic pressures, the education, the quote unquote education from the state was like, hey girls, go work in a cubicle and don't reproduce, you'll be happier. And they all bought it because they want to be first. They want to be first world. When you don't have a seat at the table, you think the seat at the table is something special, right? And so the inferiority complex that, the little Central Americans had, they reached for that ring, man. It was just like, I'm going to modernize. I'm going to buy all my food from the restaurants or from the supermarket. I'm not going to get dirty. I literally had land surveyors, right? I'm a self-ascribed metrosexual from South Florida, and I say metrosexual in the South Park way, meaning I wasn't one of these people that was like an agriculturalist, but I learned to like it, right? And I had these land surveyors coming to see my farm, and it was during the rainy season there. They wouldn't even step out of their car because they were too pretty. Like their suits were pressed, and I remember the guy looking out the window of the SUV, and the ridge road was like high on the property, but you couldn't see anything because it was a cloud forest, right? And he looks out, he goes, "Oh yeah, it checks out," and he signed off on it.
Wow.
It's because he didn't. So how could you have a land surveyor that doesn't want to get dirty? Like, doesn't even have like rain boots to go outside in the rainy season?
Well, but I have met fighters who really were afraid of getting punched. I mean, really afraid. So that was always perplexing to me.
Yeah. So the like watching the pressures, the economic pressures, along with the education to get people to essentially become, lovers of the cube, and all of that. These poor we called them the Tico, the campesino, the farmer that was on the countryside. They had no choice but to use glyphosate. They had no choice but to go into these chemical practices that in very short order, their farms were not viable. And guess what? They had to sell it to gringos like me.
Which isn't a terrible thing, but
no, I mean,
you like to keep
you want to hear something really funny? I moved there at the end of like the first real boom down there. So I moved down there in 2006, right? And there was a huge influx of gringos. And I was in the southern zone by Panama. So there weren't many people. When I say like huge boom, I'm talking like maybe a few hundred gringos. Like it wasn't crazy.
Right.
But what had happened was a lot of us had bought these old like defunct dairy farms. Like I bought an old defunct dairy farm, and a bunch of my friends, they had all bought all like these old farms. Like one was a citrus plantation where everything died, like pretty much all these farms that were dying. And that area had been essentially, slash and burn in the 80s for Wendy's and Burger King cattle. So the Costa Rican government told the Ticos of that area, they're like, okay, we'll let you be subsistence farmers. You get 5 hectares, which is like the equivalent of like 13 acres.
Right.
You have to produce, banana, plantain, coffee, and cow. If you can do that for 7 years and produce an X amount in 7 years, you get the land. And that was a great deal because there was nothing but like convicts and people like that. It was like the Australia part of Costa Rica. So they worked the land, but they worked it to death. It's the same thing I'm dealing with here in Missouri. They, like all the subsistence farmers that were here, they would get 40 acres from the government. They would kill it, and then they would just get another 40 acres. Well, they were doing it down there in the same way. And so by the time us gringos got there, what did we start doing? We start reforesting everything. We're like, this isn't supposed to be farmland at all. This is supposed to be canopy rainforest. So the majority of the gringos that were buying these huge swaths of land were just letting the forest come back. And the few Ticos that were still farming were so pissed because as the rainforest grew back, guess what? The dew point rose and the clouds started coming further and further and further down the mountain. So
blocking the sun
yeah,
and
but that's
high moisture rates and fungus and
but that was what that area was supposed to be. Like when you look at
right.
what a cloud forest is supposed to be, where it starts at that elevation, and you're not supposed to be running cattle there. Like the cattle were not good cattle. like
Right.
they were beaten up. They were eating this terrible grass for them. Like they were eating this stuff called king grass. And the only reason that was there is because the root balls were like, stable enough to hold the steep countryside mountains in place and things like that.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
so I mean, it was a shit show. And we come back and all of us gringos were not doing any of that type of farming. We were just planting, fruit tree groves and letting the jungle come back. And it was a huge shift in the environment there because they had essentially gotten rid of that rainforesty, cloud foresty environment by the late 80s. And to their detriment, 20 years later, all of us were moving in and bringing it back.
Well, you're trying to get away from modernity and cities and people. You want peace and tranquility and all those wonderful things that brings, right? So Americans are, but um, we actually I've had conversations with some folks who are connected to UN projects where a lot of money's potentially going to be thrown around in South America with different nations to teach the farmers how to grow fruits and vegetables again,
Mm-hmm.
and food instead of plants that are created, turned into drugs, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of that movement's kind of starting. So I'll always look at different areas. What do they have for mineralization in whether it's humates or volcanic rock and
Mm-hmm.
all these different things. How much is going to have to be brought on boats? All these different things, and then the components for the microorganisms and the diversity that we demand in our quality standards, I guess. Um, but it can all be brought back, and we know there's enough humate on this planet. We know there's enough paramagnetic rock, volcanic rock
Mm-hmm.
dust, and other sources that we could heal. The United States, you could heal thousands of times over.
Yes.
So it's frustrating to watch what's happening. 1 billion acres of American soil that's been decimated and denatured to the point that it has, and you can see that Americans are denatured. They are,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're merely animated enough to like function.
Yes.
They're not spiritually connected. They're not powerful human beings anymore, and the genetics are just being wrecked. And so I just interviewed Dr. Rich Orley. You're familiar with him?
No, I'm not.
Wrote a book called Minerals for the Genetic Code,
Ooh.
and amazingly intelligent guy. And so, in conversations with him about everything that's going on, we know we can fix it, and that's the frustrating part. It's human beings in our state, our physical state in this realm, have these material needs of money and shiny shit, right? And that's what a lot of people want. They want the materialistic
Mm-hmm.
things. So they're easy to entice in to do, in the 70s. You'll have bigger tractors, a new pickup truck every 3 years, and you can build a new farmhouse and you'll have new barns and all these things. Easy. That's an easy sell. Just show them data. This now you can go from 300 acres to 3,000 acres, and here's your big John Deere equipment and tear it up.
And all the
Um,
loans that you could ever want.
Sure. Then the 80s hit, of course, and Iowa. That's where the ironically, this is something that I talk about quite a bit. Is the Iowa football team had the stickers on their helmets that with the gold letters ANF, America Needs Farmers.
Mm-hmm.
That was going on, and that in 2017 is when they started um, it's the every home game at the University of Iowa. The children's hospital overlooks the stadium,
Mm-hmm.
And of course, children's hospitals are now packed with sick children
Right.
because of what we've done to the environment. And it was 2017. I was actually at the game when they told everybody, 77,000 people in that Kinnick Stadium in Iowa City, Iowa, to turn toward the Steed Family Children's Hospital and wave at the sick children that had been lined up in their hospital beds and their wheelchairs along the windows of that hospital. And I thought, this is the most hypocritical action where everybody's, we love you, get well, all this heroic feeling that 77,000 people had. And I was sitting there thinking, we're why they're there, man.
Exactly.
This is out of control. And so it caused me, it was a very emotional moment for me to, through my understanding of what was taking place for so many years, it impacted me heavily. So,
Yeah, it's interesting here in southern Missouri because I haven't gotten in with any big agricultural scene, but I have been talking. There's a Hamilton Native outpost here that's trying to reclaim the Savannah, and
okay,
they've been here. Like they're from here. They've been here. Their company's been going for 3 decades now, and they've gotten so much resistance from big ag because
sure,
what they're showing is part of what made the soil biome so incredible here was that diversity of all the native grasses, in that this area, everything east of the west of the Mississippi, um, it was savanna that turned into prairie, and the savanna used to have the most amount of birds and fowls because a savanna has a lot of grass, and it would have big, majestic trees that weren't forested. So you'd have a lot of grass, and then you'd have like a massive beech tree,
sure,
or like and that was like the perfect environment for all the fowl and all the birds, because the water holding capacity of all that, of all the root balls of all these different types of wildflowers was so magnificent that it acted like, sort of like where I was from in Florida with the Everglades. It was just this massive water filter, right? And
yeah,
it was also because the root balls were so deep, it gave like incredible, what they call carrying capacity for water. So you didn't have terrible runoff.
sure,
And with the modern industry, like when I go to areas, because where I'm at is mostly ranchers, you don't have big farming, but you do have cattle being run, and you have like a lot of horse stables and things like that. This is more of my preference.
yeah,
My wife eats a lot of steaks, so I gotta make sure I'm like right in the middle of all the cattle, And I actually like those types of farms. That's for from just like an aesthetic perspective. I actually like to look at that better anyway.
sure,
And the beautiful thing about that is that a lot of these ranches, that everything's free range, pasture, raised and pasture finished and all the rest of it. Their soil is like awesome because of all the poo.
yeah,
And I'm just thinking, I'm looking at all these, like I started reading Joe Salatin 20 years ago in Acres magazine and all this stuff. And he said the biggest problem we have with our soil is that we don't have the right grass. So therefore we don't have the right animals eating the grass. And therefore we don't have enough poo for the soil to come, like to be there. And
sure,
in a place like Iowa is like the perfect example of that. Like I was talking to one of the state representative from Iowa a few months ago, and he's like, "Yeah, that we have a saying in Iowa: plant corn on your corn."
yeah. No, and well, growing up in Iowa, the soil down in Iowa was jet black when I was a kid. Now it's tan, it's clay. I mean, it's just a medium to hold plants up now, as will say. And that's literally what it is. That's what soil is today, is just a medium. Unless you
Hmm.
have done a lot of work to bring it all back, it's just a medium to hold a plant upright. Um, to grow something with chemicals, and that's a really sad situation. But on the point of Missouri, there is huge deposits and amounts of minerals under that soil that, through that process of geology, the molecules of those
Mm-hmm.
metals, those inorganic metals, being digested by the microbes and converting to bioavailable colloids for the plant health and the environment. Um, huge amounts of minerals underneath
Mm-hmm.
that could easily be used to bring that entire state back, um, and hundreds of times nonetheless.
Yeah, and I want to bring up part of my alchemical thing that I got going on to help with that. Can I ask you a question from the chat?
Sure.
So, Cypher Bear, Christian Cypher asks, can the average homeowner apply this to their lawn and replacement of modern chemical treatments? He's talking about your product here. Let me pull it up for you. Let's do this. So we were talking about this product,
Oh, soil saviors.
Soil Saviors. Your Soil Saviors, would this be appropriate for what Christian was asking?
Yeah, and I would also advise somebody who's doing anything, which um, we don't have them labeled yet. We've always with dry spreads, the things like that for long-term mineralization of your soil as well. Because if for for the you probably don't have beginners on here, and they're probably aware of this, but I'll say it anyway. The symptoms of a bacterial or fungal outbreak in the soil, plants, uh, weeds growing everywhere, those are symptoms of sick soil, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if I put down the full diversity of minerals, especially with a dry spread, and add the minerals and the nutrients and the microbes in a foliar spray, I've given the soil everything it absolutely needs for pristine health and that utopian environment that because weeds grow because they pull elements out of the atmosphere that the soil is missing. So the weeds that grow are the elements that are missing in the soil. And when they die and decompose over 100 years, 200 years, whatever it takes to heal the soil and put the mineralization, diversity of minerals. So whatever you're missing in your soil, those are the types of weeds that are going to grow in your soil.
Mm-hmm.
So if I put down full diversity of minerals, dry spread, and a foliar spray full of everything in that box, and it can be done without all the dry spread as well. It's we've observed that many times, but you're not going to get weeds. You're not going to get those problems, and you're not going to have fungal outbreaks
Mm-hmm.
and all these things, and you're going to have a pristine lawn that's chemical free, and your children can roll around in your grass.
Oh, so good. This is like so up my alley. I think we're gonna have a really good syntropy between us, like a.
Well, we encourage people like you who are experts to do as much research as you'd like. I mean, I just had a guy here in North Dakota at the radio station. My better half has a radio show at a radio station here in Fargo. So he came up out of the blue and he goes, "Hey," he goes, "just letting you know," he goes, "I bought one of your boxes and I haven't been able to grow grass under these pine trees forever." And he goes, "And I've tried everything and I bought your product." And he goes, "Dude, like the grass is like growing like crazy. It's like totally filled in and everything." And so that was the microbes breaking down the acidity and bringing the soil back to a balance where the grass is going to grow again, right? So it's addressing the problems in the soil depending on what's needed again for the microbes that are going to express themselves to break it down and add the nutrients that everything needs to come to life.
That's awesome. Well, everybody out there, make sure that you actually go to Soil Saviors. I really feel the combination of these minerals along with the fulvic and humic acids and the probiotic that's within this in combination with our biochar, like
Yeah.
you're not really gonna, like, it's almost impossible to go wrong with these two, because the way you could think of it is the biochar in and of itself, the way we do it, the biochar is like 95% of what you're getting from us, it is actual biochar. When you buy like biochar from well, I can't make accusations. Let's just say
You can just say many of them out there.
many of them out there, your percentages of biochar are in the 10 to 15% range out of the entire volume that you're getting. And they're processing things that are toxic.
Sure.
So we are literally getting all of the wood cutoffs that we process are from Mennonite, and I always want to call them Quaker. They're not Quaker. I have
Amish.
Amish. We have Amish, essentially 3 Amish wood mills and a Mennonite wood mill that's supplying us.
That's awesome.
And you know, they're a whole, like their whole family is the operation. And so, and it's all local woods. It's all the hickory, the oak, some
And it
cedars.
creates a beautiful home for microbes.
Exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
I'm also making biochars that are a little bit more bespoke that we'll end up having out there that are made from, coffee grinds and like just different things for different purposes, right?
Right.
But the actual to mix these two products together, and I, just so you know, I normally don't ever pitch something that I haven't used myself, but Jimmy was telling me how wonderful it's been, and I trust him with this, and I can't wait to get this on my farm. And
Yeah.
and
No, and I appreciate your authenticity and passion for everything you're doing. And the thing is that from problems with gardens, problems with orchards, sick orchards that are suffering from numerous different issues, even animals. People are noticing that they don't have to use antiparasitics for their grazing animals. Their wryneck in chickens disappears in a couple of days. Blackhead in turkeys disappearing in a couple of days.
nice.
A lot of really amazing things are happening through fixing the environment, right? And so it's just over and over and over again for the last 40 years of observations that it just can't be denied that if we fix the environment, we're going to fix a lot of things.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. With this, where are you guys going? How long have you actually been, with Soil Saviors? And
We started well, I started Soil Saviors probably, what was it, 6 years ago, maybe a little longer. And that's where I was focused on the humates and a few other things. And Will was over here doing his thing. And then we collided. And there's one other gentleman from New Mexico who's doing some amazing work, Steve Moore down in New Mexico, that his cattle look like they're ready for the Westminster dog kennel show. They're, I mean, the muscle is incredible.
mhm.
The fur, their coats are as shiny as you've ever seen on a show animal.
Mhm.
And it's, I mean, to observe it, it's magical. So it's all about the diversity of, again, the elements in the soil, but it's the vitality and the life force in the soil that transfers up through the food chain and how that happens. And so it's been a really good journey for me. I was the guy who wrote a book 10 years before COVID talking about I used the setting of a financial collapse and special forces soldiers, contractors, the banking history, and time travel to send them back in time to fix things
Mhm.
once a financial collapse happened. In that book, it was the biometric tracking, nanotechnology, things that were forced on people to be able to buy groceries, to pay their bills, to get paid at work, all these different things. So I saw this coming for a long time. And so for me, um, we knew that we had a lot of solutions for those problems as well
Mhm.
with the technology that could end up in people, and with a lot of active military folks as well as civilians. There's been some dramatic solutions that have come about. So
That is awesome. That is so, because people, I always tell people that are a little bit doomer, I'm always like, God never gives you a problem that can't be solved.
Well, and that's the thing is everything he's created on this earth, when you combine them, you can solve all the problems that are created in laboratories. That's the
Yes.
beautiful thing about it because laboratory stuff, whether it's whatever chemicals are used, many times, of course, come from coal tar and petroleum, which are
Hmm.
natural organic matter that can be broken back down
Yeah,
and turned into it can be turned into gold. So
definitely.
yeah.
I want to bring up another question here from Cynthia. I don't know what that is. Cynthia breathe easy, I guess it is. I understand that ag and farm chemicals are waste from metals minings. Well, they're not only waste from metals mining. That needs to be
Well,
specific.
there are for NPKs have like uranium and other heavy
Yeah,
metals and
yeah,
things like that in them. Just the NPKs alone are damaging the microorganisms in the soil. But the fact that uranium is contained in NPKs, people should be freaking out. But it
hmm.
is what it is.
So her question is anyone talking about other ways to safely process mining waste or reduce mining industry? Um, I specifically know and am working with, well, I'm not working with them yet. I'm consulting a massive mining group out of California about how to
Mhm.
take their mine tailings and run that through biochar filters, because biochar is different than charcoal in the sense that it is so diamagnetic and it has a net negative charge
Yeah,
that anything that runs through it that has a net positive charge, especially your reactive oxygen species, it absorbs it all.
hmm,
So it's one of those great things. Like if you end up having, some of these dangerous, let's just say, secondaries from these types of operations, the biochar can absorb it. And that's also
yeah.
why we're talking to the Iowa State Legislature about this, because their problems with their nitrates in their water could be solved with using biochar.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I had a conversation with a gentleman that owns a large biochar operation, and I said, "Tell me what you're doing with your biochar." He said, "Well, we're taking, big socks of it, huge socks full of biochar, and throwing it into, toxic water pools that are, full of a lot of toxins, nitrates, and
Mm-hmm.
metals and things like that to soak it up." And I go, "Okay, awesome. What are you doing with the biochar when you're done?" And he said, "Oh, we're spreading it on fields." And I go, "What do you do? You got to inoculate it with the biology
Definitely.
that can break all that stuff down and convert that back into beneficial elements, right?" So
Yes.
it's the two together, a quality biochar like you have and the microorganisms and the mineralization that we have and putting them together, you're cooking with gas at that point.
Totally cooking with gas. In fact, I tell people do at least a month of inoculation. Like I'm an old school permaculturist slash biodynamic farmer. Like I'll do stuff from new moon to new moon, and I'll taste it and smell it. And I have a biochar pit that's almost 2 years old. That's like just now. I'm like, oh, okay. Now I'm gonna top dress my compost pile with that. Like,
Yeah, we should definitely, now better understanding everything that you're doing and your understanding when I hear some key words and things that you're talking about. I mean, my goodness, yeah, we could really do the right thing.
yeah,
Um,
I'm excited about it. Well, I'm so happy that two dudes that got hit in the head a lot in their younger years are uh, are actually digging in the dirt and trying to give the only real legacy that you can give to the world is leaving the plot of land that you're on a little bit better, right?
Beautiful, yeah, well said.
Yeah. So, Pat, I really want to thank you for your time. I'm going to show people your site again. The Soil Savior site is up right now. And then also we have your other beautiful site of Cell Saviors. I'm definitely going to buy your Cell Saviors. I'm sort of like one of how you have women that get oxytocin from buying like shoes. I'm the dude that gets like my little oxytocin rush from, trying new supplements.
I
So
think you're going to dig it. I think you're going to like it.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. That's really good
No,
stuff.
thank you very much for having me. And so I look forward to, and I'll connect you with Will as well, so you can have him on the
Great.
show. And then I'll also connect you with my better half, who does a lot of education, mindset, motivational speaking, and educating children how to grow food chemical free.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant, Pat. Well, let's talk soon. We're DMing each other all the time, so we'll go on from there.
Thank you so much.
Alrighty, you have a good night.
Okay, you too.
So everybody, I'm glad that you got to meet Pat. It's kind of fun for me. I got introduced to Pat about 2 weeks ago, and my my best friend growing up, he's like huge into MMA fighting, and I remember back in the day him bringing him up, and then I think on December 16th, I'm going to uh, be in Las Vegas actually talking with Jake Shields. So I got these titans of the MMA world in my consciousness, and they're trying to do better. I love it too, because in my conditioning, the athletes, the people that I've known that have really like looked death in the eye and have gone through the rigors of really hard training, they end up being awesome. It's just one of those things. It's awesome to be in that cut. So I'm glad that you got to see the cell saviors and the soil saviors here. Also, check out the Black Gold Biochar. This is my website, and our sales have been really good. We've been out for close to 3 weeks now. All these bros have been on the podcast, as you guys already know, hopefully. And yeah, check us out. We're going to have probably about 5 or 6 new products that are going to actually hit the site by January 1. And you get 15% off your first order. I know, like, for the last 10 years of being on the internet, like, I haven't had a product to really give you guys. Like, I was making retorts and things like that, but I could only make those in very small portions. So this is just like awesome, where we can do wholesale accounts for people. We can get you as much as you want, and we have an excellent team set up. So I'm scaling this so this will grow, and with partnerships with people like Pat and others, who knows where this will actually end up going. So I want to thank you guys for that. One other announcement before I leave is the whole thing. I got everything set up for the Elemental Festival, May 8th through the 10th in Mountain Grove, Missouri. That's happening. We got everything. We got the bank accounts, the corporation set, the insurance is ready. All the speaker agreements have been sent. Well, they all will have been sent out by the end of this week. So we're going to have just an incredible lineup of people. We're going to have Alex Zek. We're going to have Owen Benjamin. We're going to have Eileen McCusick. We're going to have Dr. Andy Kaufman. We're going to have Permy Bear. We're going to have so many people that you guys know of that, I mean, we pretty much have I've seen lineups of conferences before because I've been asked to speak at a lot of conferences. There's no lineup better than this. We're going to have Brother Marty Leeds there. We're going to have so much fun. And a lot of these people that have had like some online beefs, they've all decided to put down their differences and come together for this I call it a conference, this festival, the Elementals Festival. So portion out your time, May 8th through the 10th, Mountain Grove, Missouri. Yeah, Mountain Grove, Missouri. It's not that expensive to come to. You can fly into Springfield. no matter where you are. It's going to be a brilliant festival. We're going to have really good music. We're going to have excellent speakers. I think we have like 15 people speaking. We're going to have like 6 workshops. It's just going to be like out of this world when it comes to the amount of gravy that we're going to ladle there. So I think you guys will really appreciate that. And then over the coming, I think today we just dropped my podcast with my business partner, Raj. And we get into some of the history and some of the more scientific findings that we're getting with our product, with the biochar. So check us out there. Whenever you can hit the like button, if you listen to my podcast on YouTube, if you listen to it on Apple and you write a review on there, that helps so much with the algorithm. I'm really like, Apple is like eclipsing all other pod players for listenership. So give them some love. And any of the people that I have on that have a social media presence, if you give them like a little, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, that's always helps with this. The festival that we're going to be having, the Elementals Festival, it's really the child of having this podcast and having this stream and just being like, I've never been a profit oriented person with my pursuit of knowledge and my pursuit of like interacting with people that I respect. And it's paying off. Like the people that I've really, really respected are like, yeah, I want to be part of that conference or that festival. Let's do it. And like some really big names, like, to have Alex Zek and Owen Benjamin and Dr. Andy Kaufman and Eileen and like all the other ones that like, they're all awesome. They're just awesome. So it's going to be a really good time. Your brain might just turn to pure gravy. It might just melt, which is sometimes the brain needs to melt to have a good time. So I really appreciate you guys coming out. If you could share this and just spread the word, that always helps. And with that, I will bid you adieu.